Hey guys, it's Emma here and I'm coming to you with a little about me video for today. I've gotten so many questions and DMs lately that have all been kind of asking me the same thing or similar things, so I thought I'd answer them for you all. So I'm really excited to dive into YouTube. I've been meaning to make YouTube content forever. I think my last proper video that I popped on the channel is from 2015. I went through a really big phase of recording all my performances, so I really wanted to record them and share them and grow my YouTube, and then life got in the way. And so yeah, here we are a little bit later, and two-set have really inspired me. I've had so much fun filming the videos with the boys. So yeah, I'm going to dive into some questions that you have sent me. Okay, so the first question that I've gotten is, how did you start playing the saxophone? So I've told a little bit of this story on one of the two-set videos. So I actually started my musical journey, career life, back when I was about 6 or 7 years old. And I actually started on the violin. Still have a strings teacher, violinist mother, who was really excited for me to learn violin too. She dove straight in. I had private lessons, I had lessons at school. I was in, I think there was like a little school string ensemble, just the works from the beginning. And I hated it. I hated the violin so much. It didn't suit me. I distinctly remember crying every practice session, crying on the way to my private lessons, just absolutely hating it. And my mother, we stuck it out for a year. And then she was like, look, I really want you to learn an instrument, but it doesn't have to be the violin. What would you like to learn? And I had 3 instruments in mind, but the one I wanted the most was the saxophone. And I think we had to wait another year, one, for my hands to be big enough to fit around the saxophone, and 2, because the band program started in grade 4 at school, and so I was still pretty little. I was in grade 2 at the time. So we waited, Mum got me a saxophone, I started learning, and that's kind of it. I just really clicked with the saxophone as an instrument. I really enjoyed classical saxophone as well. Like, I studied jazz and I played in jazz bands all the way through my education, but classical saxophone spoke to me in a way I can't really explain. It's just a feeling when I play that music, when I listen to that music, when I compose that music, that really speaks to who I am as a person. Okay, so this was a really great question. I got this one on Instagram, and someone asked me, how did you know, or how did you, I better get it right. Okay, so the question was, when did you start calling yourself a saxophonist and not that you were learning to play the saxophone? So I think this is a really great question, because it's something that I actually had a really hard time with when I was finishing my undergraduate degree. So I did an undergraduate degree at the Conservatorium of Music, did a Bachelor of Music program. It was 4 years, and that included, the 4th year was an honours year as well, which included a research component, and it had some pretty intense recital performance standard components as well. When I finished that, I didn't really know what my career was going to look like. I knew that it was going to be bits and pieces. As a saxophone player, we do some performing, we do some teaching, we do some this, some that. You know, you mix and match and create your career that suits you. But I didn't know when I stopped being a student and I started being a professional. And I think this is something that a lot of musicians face when they study music at a postgraduate level, because when you are an undergrad student, almost all of us are taking professional gigs. We're taking these professional opportunities and we're working at that level. And a lot of our lecturers start to become our colleagues. It's a really weird and odd kind of transition that it's hard to manage. And I found it particularly tricky trying to sort of, I don't want to say brand sounds really lame, but trying to position myself as, okay, I'm starting to to want to be seen as a professional in the community and in the industry. So for me, that transition kind of happened sort of 1 to 2 years later, where I stopped saying I'm studying saxophone, or, I'm doing my degree in saxophone, and I just started to say, I am a saxophone player. I'm a saxophonist from Brisbane. This is who I am. And what really helped at the time was I went straight from my undergraduate degree into, oh my gosh, that plane is really loud. So I went straight from my undergraduate degree into my doctoral degree. So I actually have a PhD in saxophone. You can read my thesis online. It's all available at Griffith University. It's kind of cool to be able to share that research with the world. So when I was in that PhD program, I started when I was quite young, and I definitely felt very intimidated by the other doctoral students and the other people in the industry. And I was in this really kind of formative age where I was trying to say, yep, I'm a saxophone player, book me for gigs, I'm here, I want to organize gigs myself, I want to kind of get out into the industry, but I'm spending most of my days at the university working on my doctorate around much older, more experienced musicians who were amazing, absolutely amazing. And so it kind of planted this seed of like, oh, am I good enough? Am I not good enough? And I had to really work through that. And working through that process and going, yes, actually I am enough, is what helped me kind of build that confidence and that that comfort to sort of say, yeah, I am a saxophone player. I'm a professional. I'm here to work. I'm here to make great art. Okay, so the next question is also a really good one. It's, do you only play classical music or do you also play jazz? So I think there's this really common thing, I've seen it, and I've seen it overseas as well, where because of the way university programs are structured, saxophone players kind of pick a lane. They're either in the jazz program or the classical program. And I was in the classical program. To me, that music just matches my musical identity a little better. It matches my personality a little better. And it's just kind of what I was interested in. But I have played jazz and studied a little bit of jazz sort of all the way through. It's really common in schools in Australia that, they're going to have a concert band and a jazz band. And I learned a lot when I was in high school about the differences, and got myself some mouthpieces and some gear that was different for the two different bands. I've picked up jazz gigs along the way. I've picked up, all sorts of different work. And I've even found a few performances that have really channeled the different genres. So even though it's a classical gig, the compositions have a lot of jazz elements that require me to call on that. Some things that come to mind is like playing the saxophone parts for Gershwin pieces with the orchestra. Some other examples are in my quartet. I have an amazing quartet, Borrega Sax. We've been together since we were all students at uni, and our resident composer, our tenor player, Andrew Ball, he is very heavily influenced by jazz and contemporary influences. So sometimes we're playing his music and, there's those jazz influences. We've had jazz composers write for the quartet. Like, it's just, I think, a fact of life when you're a saxophone player that you've got to be able to do both. And yes, you can specialize, and yes, you can have your niche and your thing that you want to do. But if you want to get more gigs, if you want to get more work, the more versatile you are, the better. So if you're thinking, nah, this is the one thing that I want to do, I want to be a classical saxophone player, I only want to play the Glazunov concerto for the rest of my life, great. You may not get the most amount of work. That's the way it is. So what saxophone repertoire would I recommend? Oh my gosh. How long is a piece of string? Like, really? This is a really, really hard question to answer. And I did try and answer it a little bit on my IG a little while ago. I don't know where to start. So what I would probably suggest is, if you're a saxophone player, I think that you're listening and what you should look out for is kind of the classics and to follow the tradition of classical saxophone. Have a look at the more modern repertoire as well. So what, I guess if I had to pick like some absolute like starting points, some absolute bangers of the classical saxophone world, you know, you've got your main concertos, like your Glazunov concerto for saxophone, Ibez's Concertina da Camera. You could then look at a little bit of Villa-Lobos, like the Fantasia for soprano saxophone, which is sort of something completely different, but is a real standard sort of piece of repertoire. You could then sort of pivot a little bit and you could look at any of the albums by the Prism Quartet, any of the albums put out by Aurelia Saxophone Quartet. I could just keep naming groups. I'm just like, have 10 million names running through my head. If you're in Australia, I really think it's important to connect with the history of Australian classical saxophone. We are very, very lucky to have had Continuum Sax, which are a brilliant quartet that have been doing things for a very long time. I guess if I had to name an absolute favorite composer for saxophone right now, it's Thomas Green. He's in Brisbane. He's written a piece for Borrega, which is one of my all-time favorite pieces. It's on YouTube. And he wrote Shimmer for me, which is, again, one of my all-time favorite pieces to play. It feels like he understands what it feels like to play a saxophone. So I think that it's really important to understand the history of classical saxophone and then look at what's happening in the industry right now. And then I think it's important to think about female composers and female representation, which is why I've saved for last Kathy Lakuta. She is one of my longtime friends and collaborators. She's a brilliant composer and pianist. Her music for saxophone is fabulous. It's hard, it is tough, it is interesting, it is accessible to a wide range of audiences. I've recorded some of her works that are already on my channel, so I feel like I've rambled for a really long time. So what do I do in a day? I think this is a really interesting question because every musician's career is a little bit different, particularly because we're almost all freelancers. Like we are all running our own careers unless you have, you know, like a full-time position in an orchestra or you're teaching full-time, you know, you're managing your schedule and getting yourself opportunities. For me, I do a little of everything. So I have an amazing teaching position that I absolutely love. I am head of woodwind at a really innovative and forward-thinking school. The music program is part of a larger arts program, which is just, it's just so different to how a lot of schools run their program. And I'm really fortunate that I get to just explore the things that I love about music, and everyone that's on this team is pretty much on the same perspective that music education is there to help people grow, to help young people learn and prosper and build a love of music. We're not there to turn every single student into a professional musician because that's not realistic and it's not fun. Music education has the ability to teach so many non-musical skills, to build resilience, to build independence, to build organizational skills, to build critical thinking, to build problem-solving skills, like the brain research into how music affects the brain. Did I just say brain too many times? I think I did. So the research into how music education affects the brain is absolutely fascinating. And at the end of the day, a good music teacher has the ability to influence a student's life forever, indefinitely, to build a love of the arts, a love of creativity, to help build a resilience and willingness to make mistakes, to try, to, you know, to do amazingly, to fail and accept that failure is a part of life. It's all on the journey of learning an instrument. And that's kind of my ethos in my teaching role, is to make sure with students that, yes, I am pushing them to be better and build their technique and to perform well in the bands and all of that. Yes, that's important. That's there. But fundamentally, everything I do is centered on a fun, broader educational experience for my students. So that's my teaching role, and that's, about 2/3 of the week is spent there. I then also do performances in a few different capacities. So as a freelance musician, I will get booked for working with different ensembles or bands or groups or by myself. Also sometimes get contract work with the Queensland Symphony Orchestra, which is an absolute blast. So there's those gigs and freelance work that pop out throughout the year. I then have, I actually do quite a bit now that I'm thinking about it. I then have a side business that has absolutely nothing to do with music. It's called Emma and Vincent, and it is a lifestyle brand startup that I just started recently. I won't talk about it too much because it's not really related to music, but obviously a lot of time is dedicated to growing that. I also then spend time in my week practicing, of course. You just need time to keep your skills up and keep growing and keep moving forward as a player. And I also spend a lot of time in my week composing as well. So a lot of my compositions are a little bit experimental in nature, a little bit contemporary, which I find really fun. And if COVID hadn't have happened, I actually would have been, the plan was to be doing a national tour in Australia of my own compositions, which would have been a first for me to play all my own compositions in a program. It's been a little bit tricky. It's been really tricky. Australia is so lucky with COVID, but it has changed my career in terms of the amount of performances and live performances. I've had a lot of stuff cancelled, a lot of plans that were cancelled because at the time restrictions didn't look good or it wasn't possible. But then the month came along and restrictions had lifted, so we probably could have done it anyway. That's life. That's what it is. And I mean, it's been great because it's forced me to look into YouTube. And one of my goals is figuring out a way to record my compositions, which are designed to be live and immersive, concert experiences, and to figure out a way to record them so that I can share them online, whether that's in some sort of live event or more likely some sort of pre-recorded video that I would share. So a fun question to finish is, what are my hobbies outside of music? So I like to get up to a few different things. I am a bit of an F45 junkie. I had a bit of a hiatus there, but I'm back at my F45 studio, which I love, and I go about 6 days a week. I have a few different activities that I like to do. Photography has been a massive hobby of mine since I was super young. I love my Canon cameras. I know there's like a Canon Nikon war, so hopefully I don't lose any followers. If you're a Nikon follower, please stay. I love photography, and whenever I've traveled or even just around my city of Brisbane, I do love taking photography, nature photographies, wildlife, beautiful flowers and parks and beaches and sunsets, that sort of thing. I also am a little bit geeky in that I'm obsessed with reading. I'm devouring a new book pretty much every month. I could be faster if I had more free time. I also love crossword puzzles. I've gotten really obsessed with the New York Times crossword puzzle app. I love doing the daily puzzle that comes out, although I'm really bad at Friday and Saturday's puzzles. Not possible. I also then, the usual things. I'm very lucky to live in a beautiful part of Australia, so close to beaches, getting outdoors. A little fun fact about me is I actually only learnt to ride a bike last year. I never learnt as a kid, and it was a big regret. And now that I have learnt to ride a bike, it is probably one of my favorite outdoor activities. We have a beautiful river here in Brisbane, and there's just this gorgeous loop along the river, across the bridge, and sort of back the other way. That is just probably the most fun thing to do in Brisbane for me. I love it. I love being near the water. Some other hobbies, A lot of my hobbies are musical, I won't lie. And I'm definitely, I'm not a super like outdoorsy crazy person. I'm not a massive surfer or something like that, but keeping active, keeping outdoors a little bit with my cycling or, a quick day at the beach, reading, making sure I'm still learning and growing. And I guess, oh, I can't believe I forgot it. I just looked out the window and saw. I grow my own chili plants as well. So I make my own hot sauce from chilies that I grow. And I just looked out the window and saw all my chili plants and went, oh yeah, that's right, I do that. So I have about 10 different types of chili plants growing, and I grow them, collect the fruits, and then make my own hot sauces that I eat and give to friends. Alrighty guys, thank you for sticking with me this far. I hope that was a little bit of an interesting video for you guys. Got to know a little bit about me. I've got a few different things planned for this channel. I really want to make it a combination between cool saxophone repertoire and recordings and things to listen to, and then just some fun conversations and collabs. So please like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye!